And, and from Master's wonderful whispers from eternity. O divine teacher, train me to recognize the difference between my soul's lasting happiness and the passing pleasures of the senses. Keep my eyes open, that I be not deceived by my senses, decked out as they are in stolen royal trappings, and in the mirage cloak of false happiness, as, thus disguised, they try to enter the mansion of my life. Discipline my unwise, wayward senses, that my pleasures be spiritualized, and that I look ever beyond the illusion of glittering visible forms to find divine joy hidden, simply dressed in the white robe of humility. Oh, what a master of language he was. Just a moment, I have to clear my throat. When many of you know Swami re-edited that book just before Crystal Clarity published it. We had won the legal right to publish the original writings of Master, and Crystal Clarity naturally wanted to make Whispers available. Whispers had been severely edited by the original publisher, so we wanted to go back to the original. And with good form, it was all put into place, and because we were using a book that had already been printed, it was just laid out. And then Swami was given the proofs to just go through and see what was there. It was his birthday weekend. I don't know if it was his 80th birthday. It was a big weekend. Hundreds of people were here, totally full of activity from start to finish. And he read through this book, which was about to go to the printer. There was a printing deadline on it. It was just going to be distributed. The stores were expecting it. Swami looked at it and said, those infinite words, "This needs editing." Like that. And so he took on the task in the middle of that weekend of editing that book, because not for any personal reason, but when he read it, he said, "Master wants me to edit this book." And of course, one of the assignments that Swami was given was writing and editing, so he felt that it was appropriate. He said, Master's exuberance was just so great, and the images would get all mixed up. First you're a bird soaring in the sky, and then you're a fish in the bottom of the ocean, and then you're inside a submarine, and then you're in a royal palace dispersing jewels. And it was just the devotion would just pour out of him. So Swami took it upon himself to edit that. As it happens, I have this karma with Swami. I call it I helicopter in at interesting moments, because I had long since ceased to live here, but I happened to be here for the time that he was here. And many years ago, I worked as his secretary, and when he wrote The Path, the autobiography, The New Path, that was the last book he wrote without a computer. And so he had to type, and because he was such a conscientious editor, he would type and retype and type and retype. If he changed even one word on the page, he needed a completely clean page before he could decide if the book was good or not. I had just, well, we were all new here. I mean, I was new, it was 1973 or something like that. And I offered to do a lot of the retyping for him. He was very skeptical. Not so much that I couldn't type, he knew I could do that, but he was reluctant to give up the certainty that I wouldn't miss anything. And also, in retyping, you also learn. But finally, he decided it was efficient enough, so when he started in on this book, he edited it by hand, because it was already in front of him, and I could read his handwriting, which was no small thing. But he would write like this. He just sat and he just went through the book, and he only went through it. He might have only gone through it once. At the most, he only went through it twice, which was extremely unusual. When he pronounced it done after 2 times through, all of us who knew him, especially those people in the publishing business who had been fooled by him before, when he said he was finished, but he had to do more. But interestingly, this is what he said. If I keep working on it too much, he said, it will turn into my book. He said, I can only work on it a little bit because the vibration of it needs to remain Master's vibration. And he said he would just go through the book like this and he would just know exactly what needed to be said, which was one of the reasons he edited faster than I could type. I had to stay up much later in order to keep up with it. And then he met the deadline. He set his mind to it. He just did what he was meant to do. Now, what we see in Swami's life is exactly what we're talking about in our reading today. It's not that the form of life is different. The avatar is born in a human body and has human parents, and it's not the way we look. It's nothing as simple as being able to assume the right costume and then being perceived as something other than what we are. It's entirely how we use what God has given to us that makes the difference. Swami would often comment just so simply, the only difference between the worst criminal and the greatest saint is the way they behave. Which seems like rather a massive difference, but it's interesting to think about. You could be the worst ever, and then if you have a revelation and change the way the energy flows through you, then suddenly you are something you were not before. This is the difficulty of being partly on the material plane, is that things seem so heavy, and we seem so sort of trapped in what we are. We don't understand that this is just always a flow of energy. Whatever we are could be shifted in just an instant. That's what looks like miracles when the saints and the masters do that. Oh, you were dead. Now you're not dead because the master touches you in a certain way. And we're so amazed from this perspective, but all it is the appropriate application of sufficient energy. I'm always amused when I have seen occasional films, that they make about Jesus, or mostly about Jesus. That's when you see it most. And they know that Jesus was able to do miraculous things. And being on the material plane, we think it takes physical energy to shift. So you have pictures of Jesus, doing a miracle. And he just works so hard, and sometimes he breaks into a sweat. And then after he's done, he has to collapse, And it's just, they don't know how else to say it. They know he's done something spectacular, and we try to do it in the way that we do things. Whereas, in fact, the movement of energy just takes nothing. And it's so effortless on the part of the one who does it. And I was, many years ago, on one of our trips to India, when our pilgrimage group went to Badrinath, which is high up in the Himalayas, 10 or 12,000 feet, a temple to Babaji. All of these things have become exceedingly accessible now. When we first went up there, the road was absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. You just went up like this. It had washed away, and you were on the edges, and you saw a few buses that had rolled down the hill, and you were in one of those buses. But it was worth it. Now the road is, the second trip we took, we warned all our pilgrims, this is horrible, this is terrifying, this is going to be, just get ready. And then we just sailed up like that. It was nothing. But when we were there once, we went above to visit this sadhu that we'd heard about. And he was called Bakswala Baba. Wala means you have a laundry wala, you have a chai wala. He was the box wala. And he lived in this little kutir up in the mountains. And it was the first time I'd been that high in the Himalayas. I'd never been in a circumstance like that. He was in silence. He was writing in Hindi on his little board. And the reason he was called Boxwala is because when the snows come at that height, you can't really function. So most of the sadhus come down from the mountain and they actually take the murti of Babaji and they take it down to 7,000 feet at Josimath, and the murti Babaji lives in Josimath for the winter, and then he goes back to Badrinath when the snows melt a little. All the sadhus, they say, I'm just repeating what was said to me, all the sadhus come down from there except Boxwala, because Boxwala Baba has a big box, a metal box. And Boxwala Baba goes into the metal box, goes into a state of deep meditation, just leaves his body and spends his time up in the Himalayas in his astral body with Babaji. So I couldn't hear his voice, I couldn't understand his words because he's writing it on this board and our guide is, and I'm sitting there, I'm looking out at the mountains, I'm in this little kutir, I don't know what incarnation I was in, I don't know what planet I was in, I was just somewhere else, you know, looking at the box. It was just like, you don't know what to think. So eventually, excuse me a second, my throat gets dry. So Swamiji was living in India at that time, and he'd heard about this man because many of our pilgrims were knowing him. Swami says to me, what do you think? You know, who is he? How do you feel? I said, sir, there were so many influences on me, I don't know which was which. I was on another dimension, but I don't know if it was the satsang, I don't know if it was the mountains, I don't know if it was whether that had been my kutir in some previous lifetime, I didn't know what was happening. And I said, but it was so odd to me that he spoke so casually about going into this box, going into his astral body, hanging out with Babaji for the winter, you know, like that. Like, I think I'll go to Hawaii for a couple of weeks, you know. And Swami's response, so often with Swamiji, it was so interesting. You know, I'm a chatty sort of person, and so I would talk with Swamiji a lot, and he was kind enough to speak back to me. And sometimes I would say something that just wasn't quite right. And then the energy of his response, you know, usually when you communicate with someone, you're sort of moving in the same vibration. You're exchanging energy like this. But every so often, my vibration would just go over here somewhere, and so Swami would offer something completely different. So I said, he was so casual about it. And Swami so casually said, well, at a certain point, it's just natural to you. There's no part of you that is in awe of what you're doing. Because if you were in awe of what you were doing, well, you wouldn't be able to do it. It just has to be what just comes through you, like that. And it stayed with me so strongly. And sometime later, some of you have heard me tell this story, but it's exactly apt for today. I was in Bangalore when Haridas and Roma was still there, and it was the first time I'd been there. I was meeting people for the first time, and they were asking me, how did you meet Swami? How did you get on this path? And so I'm telling them this, and I was 22, I saw Swamiji, I just immediately decided this was my life. It took me a little bit of time, but I just dissolved everything and went to Ananda Village and never looked back all these years later. And being very Indian, they said to me, and what did your parents think? Being very American, I said, I never thought to ask them. And then there was a certain kind of, you know, little hubbub. You never thought to ask them, like this, going around. But it also, I suddenly saw it from another perspective. That, oh, I just met Swami and left everything and never looked back. And I just said it as casually as that. Because at a certain point, it's just natural to you. You see, and this is what the masters are showing us. They arrive in the same body, Sometimes I think of it like this. They're over there in the infinite, as if the infinite was there and not here. But okay, the infinite's over there, and it's time for them to incarnate. And so however the system works, which I don't know how it works, but anyway, they get called over to here. They come down, and suddenly, as it is on this plane, there seems to be this wall between us and infinity. Isn't that so? If a master walks in here, he's simultaneously in the infinite. We think that it's somewhere else. And in the Bible, when Jesus says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, then the question is asked, well, then where is it? And people say, lo here and lo there, the language, meaning, is it here? Is it there? Is it here? No, it's within you. And if it's within you, we don't have to go anywhere to get there. And it's never absent. It's always here. But we don't know that. So the masters come across, and as soon as a baby is born, as soon as the child comes out of the womb, they start looking around, and they start reaching, and they start drawing things in. The masters come over, here's the big wall. We get so excited, look at all that shiny stuff. We turn our back to the exit sign and we run, to get involved. All those shiny things, and they're so interesting, all of them, right? We don't recognize that we ourselves are shining light and it's being reflected. We think it's coming from the reflection. We don't know that we're the source. The master comes over the wall and he faces the wall and he starts burrowing through. It's just as simple as that. He's standing right where we are, but he's facing the right direction. And we've got our backs to who we really are. But fortunately, it only takes us a few million lifetimes of pursuing those shiny objects for us to gradually realize that this isn't attractive to me. And you don't automatically pick up something icky. It's like at first you think it's nice and you play with it, but if it disappoints you or hurts you or gives you everything it possibly can give you, but it's not enough. At one point in the apartment I was living in Ananda, in our community in Palo Alto, we put a new rug in. And, in my life, the number of new rugs I've put in is, let me think, 1. And no, actually 2. This was number 1. And it was a big deal. We wanted a certain color. It was hard to get. We had it shipped from across the country. It was delivered here, and big deal. So finally, all the furniture's out, and the rug is all put in there, and all the furniture is gone. And so it's like, there is the rug. I'm so excited about the rug. I looked at the rug. I sat on the rug. I lay down on the rug. I lay on my back on the rug, like that. And all of a sudden, it was just like, this rug has given me all the happiness it's ever going to give me. And it couldn't love me back was part of the problem. It was just there. I mean, it was a small thing. My attachment to the rug was very slight, but it was very vivid in my mind. Like that goes on, doesn't it? We want it, and even the wonderful souls that we have as our brothers and sisters, we love each other with everything we have. And it's still not quite enough, is it? Because it's the perfect love of God that we're looking for. That's the God-implanted desire. We know what we were made for. And then we stop reaching for those things anymore, and we begin to wonder if maybe the whole concept I've been working with is just not right. And that is the grace of God. When that first thought comes to us at any point, however it comes, whatever delivers it, that at some point it occurs to us that I have my back, I'm facing the wrong direction, that I need simply to turn. That's all. We just need simply to turn. Ask a different question, which will get a different answer. Over the many years of being involved with Ananda, I've often had the role of marketing, trying to tell the world who we are. And of course, you do your due diligence. And when you're being trained in these things, which I was briefly, what is your demographic? That's the question that's asked. Gee, I don't know. It's hard to say. You can't really pull any category of humanity out. But it's a state of consciousness that we're talking about. It's our demographic, so to speak, God's demographic, is those for whom this question has occurred. What is really going on here? And why, no matter how hard I try to squeeze absolute fulfillment out of my rug and my house and my partner and my children and my education and my money, why is it not enough? And is there something that really is enough? And once your mind begins to turn that way, once your heart begins to turn that way, everything just looks different. And the decisions that you make, what you're drawn to do, you can't help yourself. Meaning it forces its way through you. And this is the grace of God. And as we say, as you'll hear, our Festival of Light, which Swamiji created some decades ago and becomes the poetic, repeated ritual. As Swamiji said, when Swami first created that, things that happened that seemed so big at the time just fade into history. It was actually controversial when Swami first had us do a ritual. Some folks were convinced this was the beginning of the slippery slide down into institutional religion, and we were just on the edge of becoming the Catholic Church. And it was very tumultuous. People actually walked away from Ananda on the basis of the fact that now every week we'd have to listen to the same words. But Swamiji said to us, the purpose of a ritual, it's the doorway to actual realization. Now there's such a huge difference, just between knowing the words and knowing the words. Master himself described, it might even be the introduction to Whispers, I think it's in there, where he encourages the reader to get beyond paper and ink into the actual consciousness that this is really a doorway for consciousness. When Swami Kriyananda was speaking at one of, I heard this happen many times. He would come and where we live in Palo Alto, and he would stand on the dais of our temple. And I remember once being extremely conscious of the fact that what he was projecting first was a vibration. And as soon as the vibration started through him, he would find a word to put on the vibration. And then we would receive it, and we would receive, if we were sensitive, the vibration, and then the word would come after. And the word was just a symbol for the vibration. But words have that power. Listening to the choir sing that extraordinary song, Blessed the Life. Of course, you add melody to it, so it's extra, but blessed the life, just even that phrase. You can hear it, and I have heard it hundreds of times, but all of a sudden, blessed the life just says something that it never said before. And so the masters come again and again, and they say the same thing, and they put their vibration into it, and if we are able, if we are eager, let me say more than eager, if we are desperate, that's what it comes to. You don't make these kinds of changes just because, it looks nice. This season I'll be a devotee. Everybody's wearing devotee now, so I'll wear devotee. It comes out of your bone marrow. It comes out of something so much more powerful than that. That's what we have to strive for. The last thought I'll leave you with is one of my absolute favorite parts of the Bible. At the end of his life, Jesus started driving people away, by doing things that were immensely challenging. Swamiji said that Master did the same, because as long as Master was in the body, as long as Jesus was in the body, he could hold people with his power. But after the Master leaves, after the avatar passes, it's the responsibility of the disciples to carry on the message. And they have to be strong enough to be able to do that, and they have to be unified enough. So some of the others, the Guru doesn't abandon them. It's just time for them to express their discipleship in other ways. So Jesus starts saying, this is the wonderful, eat my body, drink my blood, which was a little hard to understand. And Jesus didn't say, I am symbolically talking about a ritual that my institutional church will develop later. He just said to his audience, eat my body, drink my blood. And then, I love this part in the Bible, the disciples said to one another, this is a hard teaching. And because we had Swamiji as a living example, and because Master's life is so close to ours, we can humanize this. And you can really see they come together. The Master says something so weird, they're walking out and they sort of whisper to one another, what do we do about this? And from that point, many walked with him no more, the Bible says. So then Jesus turns to Peter. Peter, who's, the rock upon which I will build my church. And he says to Peter, will you also leave me? Now the Bible is very truncated. Why would Jesus ask Peter that question? What was going on around them? Because he wouldn't have asked it just for no reason. And I wonder, did all of Peter's friends leave? Did his wife leave? Did he have a wife? Did his wife leave? Did his mother leave? Like, his whole life is built around this? And Jesus asked him. I suspect, without knowing, I'm just making this up, that Peter had risen to the occasion in some way. And Jesus was confirming that. Will you also leave me? Imagine just sitting there and having the Master ask you that. And Peter says, and I love this also, Peter does not say, oh, I know what you're saying, Lord. You're talking about your consciousness. You're not really, just give a little philosophical discussion. All Peter said was, where would I go? Which is really quite an answer, because that's also implying that if there was a place to go, maybe I would go there. But what he really means is, this is who I am. And this is what the Bible is also, what Swami is also saying to us this morning when he says, they're showing us who we are. This is who I am. There's no way I could go anywhere and not be your disciple. This is who I am. And you see, at a certain point, that becomes natural. You don't have to try. It's simply who you are. And whenever that arises in you, even for a split second, fall on your knees and thank God for the grace of it. All we do is align ourselves so that the grace can change us. God bless you. Blessed, blessed, the life that is given to God. Blessed, blessed, the ways where his feet have trod.
We're going to play Love is the Perfection of Friendship. This comes from the Secrets of Love album, Swami Kriyananda's composition.